Hello and welcome to the PLURI course on EU policy and multilingual education. This course forms part of the PLURI project, which is co-funded by the European Union. It is intended for teachers, educators and practitioners of all kinds who want to learn more about managing linguistic diversity, but who are new to the topic. We have prepared a set of videos for you covering different theoretical and practical aspects related to multilingualism. Please subscribe to our channel and feel free to contact us with any questions you may have. A quick disclaimer: any opinions presented in these videos are our own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the European Union or the European Education and Culture Executive Agency. My name is Olesya Chayka and I work with a migrant-led NGO called Koopkultur in Berlin, which supports multilingual learning in schools and communities by drawing on research, practice and lived experience. As a multilingual person and parent, I bring professional and personal perspectives into questions of language, identity, and inclusion. And in this part of the course, I invite you to explore these issues from both theoretical and practical points of view. In other videos, my colleagues cover EU policy topics, translanguaging, and combining language learning with sustainability by using gardens and natural materials as learning resources. In this session, we will see how teachers and practitioners can promote language awareness in schools and other learning environments. It focuses on practical, accessible activities that encourage children to notice how languages, signs, images, and messages appear or are absent in their everyday environments. Throughout the presentations, I will share practical adjustments and insights based on our experience, such as what supported engagement, what needed simplification, and how the activities can be adapted for different groups, age range, and settings. The aim is to offer transferable ideas that support inclusive, reflective work on language visibility in both formal and non-formal educational contexts. Let's begin. So, why is working with language visibility beneficial? For example, school space can become a meaningful learning resource for students. Signs, posters, and displays created by students offer authentic opportunity to practice vocabulary, reading, writing, and multimodal literacy. Students feel recognized when they see their home languages or cultural references represented. This often makes them more willing to contribute. Analyzing which languages or images are visible and which are absent encourages critical thinking, as students start to question who is included and excluded and which languages are valued. For teachers, the school environment itself becomes a pedagogical resource. Corridors, notice board, classrooms can be used for comparison tasks, genre work, vocabulary building, and project-based learning. By working with language visibility, teachers can draw on their students' full linguistic repertoires. This can be achieved even in contexts where official language policies feel restrictive. At the same time, mapping and co-creating the school environment enables teachers to learn more about their students' backgrounds, languages, and interests, things that would not usually come to light during regular lessons. A multilingual, co-created school environment signals a sense of welcoming and belonging. It demonstrates to students, families, and visitors that different languages are part of school life. It makes implicit language policies visible and creates opportunities for dialogue and reflection in different school spaces. When extended beyond the building, schoolscaping can also connect the school to its neighborhood, positioning it as an active and engaged community member. Approaching language visibility can transform everyday school spaces into valuable learning resources. Building on this session has 4 main learning objectives. First, you will explore ways in which space can be used to promote language awareness, inclusion, and reflection. I will also present a few practical activities that can be implemented in schools and non-formal learning environments. These activities are designed to be accessible, flexible, and easy to integrate into existing practice. You will also learn how to adapt these activities for different groups and contexts. Finally, we will explore possible pitfalls based on our team's practical experience. We will look at how to prevent these challenges and plan supportive strategies to help children engage step by step. Together, these objectives can help us to use language visibility thoughtfully and realistically, strengthening learning, participation, and belonging in our own educational context. When we talk about language visibility in schools and learning spaces, We are talking about how clearly different languages and voices are recognized and given legitimacy in everyday school life. This includes what children see on walls and notice boards, as well as what they hear as they move through the building. Language visibility is not only about displaying many languages. The important point is the overall message that the space conveys. Which languages are recognized? Who feels invited to participate? Whose voices are missing? To make this easier to work with in practice, we consider language visibility in terms of 4 interconnected dimensions. The first dimension is written language. Language becomes visible when it appears in shared spaces, such as on doors, in corridors, and on notice boards, rather than only in books and worksheets. This includes signs, rules, labels, schedules, and students' work that can be seen by everyone. An important question here is not only how much text there is, but also which languages and scripts are used and who is permitted to write publicly. These choices quietly communicate what languages are valued in the school and who is invited to participate. This is often one of the easiest ways for teachers to start working with language visibility in practice. Language visibility encompasses more than just words. Images, symbols, and colors can also convey powerful messages. Photos, drawings, flags, emojis, color choices can represent certain languages, cultures, or groups while ignoring others. When students' cultures, festivals, or everyday practices are represented visually, their linguistic identities become more apparent, even in the absence of written language. This dimension is important for practitioners because although visuals are often feel neutral, they still shape who feels seen and recognized in a space. The third dimension of language visibility concerns placements and hierarchy. This concerns where messages are placed and how visible they are. Large displays at eye level or near entrances and offices signal importance and high status. Smaller, temporary, or hidden items suggest lower priority. Even when several languages are present, their arrangement can establish a clear hierarchy. Some languages appear central and permanent, while others are marginal or temporary. For teachers and practitioners, this dimension illustrates that language visibility is not just about displaying languages, but also about how they are positioned. It also provided a practical approach to working with children, encouraging them to compare items in central location with those at the margins. The fourth dimension of language visibility is sound and voice. Language is not only something we see, it is also something we hear. Announcements, greetings, assemblies, songs, videos all influence which languages are audible in school. When only one language is used in these situations, other languages remain invisible, even if they are present in the community. Including multiple languages at appropriate moments, such as in greetings, events, shared activities, make those languages part of the common soundscape. This dimension encourages practitioners to move beyond visual displays and consider more broadly how language is experienced in everyday school life. Together, these dimensions help us to understand language visibility as a layered experience shaped by text, images, space, and sound, and provide clear entry points for practical work. We have looked at language visibility through its various dimensions: written language, images and symbols, placement and hierarchy, and sounds and voices. Together, these dimensions demonstrate that language visibility goes beyond what is displayed. In this next part of the presentation, we will move to practical applications. First, we focus on one concrete activity that we call Language We Bring With Us. This activity starts with the group's own language resources and uses reflection to raise awareness of how languages are presented, used, and valued within the group. This activity lays important groundwork. It helps both children and adults in the group recognize existing language diversity before exploring language visibility in physical spaces. In the second part of the presentation series, we will build on this foundation by introducing a second activity that focuses on linguistic observation training and exploring language visibility in the learning environment itself. Starting from what the group brings with them, such as their languages, experiences, and ways of speaking, makes language exercises safer, more meaningful, and students and adults feel less exposed and more willing to participate. This activity makes the language present in the room visible from the very beginning. Using the group's home languages and dialects sends a clear message that these languages belong in the learning space. By placing the group's own language resources at the center, this warm-up activity should boost confidence and curiosity and prepare the ground for deeper language awareness and learning exercises. For this activity, you only need few simple materials. First of all, you need to have a wall or a large board where everyone can see and add their contributions. Sticky notes or colorful cards with tape to stick the cards to the wall or to the board work well for collecting answers and making them visible. And black markers are recommended so the text stays readable from a distance. You will also need the written prompts on big paper that can be attached to the wall or to the board with a tape, and these prompts can be written in different languages. When working with the activity, a few practical adjustments can make a big difference. If the group is new to language awareness or quite large, it helps to use fewer prompts and slow the pace. Allowing more time for reflection is often more valuable than collecting many answers. Reflection does not have to happen in one common language. If participants are more comfortable expressing themselves in different languages, this can be supported, especially when facilitators or peers can help bridge understanding. It's also important to plan enough time for reflection. In larger groups, short discussion in small groups often work better than a single whole group conversation. Finally, this is an activity for everyone, including adults in the group. Facilitators should take part, model the task, and clearly show which languages students can use to ask questions or get support. This signals that all languages are welcome and that language awareness is something we explore together. I'm going to present 5 questions you can use for this exercise, and I will demonstrate how each prompt provides a different perspective on language use. I will also show how the prompts work together and the insights that you can gain from them. When we came up with these questions, our aim was to distinguish between different types of language use. Rather than treating language as a single fixed skill, I speak language X, we wanted to encourage the group to view languages as something that evolves with context. These prompts are tools, not tests. You don't need to explore every layer with every group. Starting with noticing and patterns is often enough. Deeper questions about meaning, value, or visibility should only be introduced when the group is ready and trust the facilitator. When used carefully, these prompts help to shift the focus away from naming languages to understanding how, when, and why languages matter in everyday life. Languages we are comfortable reading and writing in. This prompt highlights the role of school in shaping language competence. Reading and writing skills often reflect access to formal education rather than overall language ability. Some learners may be highly fluent in language orally but not literate in it, while others may read and write comfortably in languages they rarely speak. This helps to avoid equating literacy with value and to recognize the different kind of language expertise that exist. Languages we speak. When we ask about the languages we speak, we imply not only the language skills of the group, but also the languages we feel comfortable using in public. These are typically the languages associated with school, friends, families, or wider society. It is important to remember that this prompt does not simply measure abilities. It also reflects confidence, social acceptance, and perceived value. Some learners may speak a language but hesitate to name it, while others may name a language that they only use in limited context. Languages we understand but do not speak. The prompt makes partial language knowledge visible, which is important because it normalizes partial competence and reduces shame around not speaking well. Many learners understand a language without speaking it, particularly in family or community contexts. This can lead to a situation where children are addressed in one language but reply in another, or where speaking feels risky or unnecessary. Recognizing this kind of multilingualism can reduce feeling of shame and challenge the idea that language only counts if it's spoken fluently. And it reveals hidden resources that can be built on later. Family languages provides insight into the language associated with home, care, and relationships. Even if they are not used or valued in school, these languages often carry strong emotional meaning. In this prompt can reveal intergenerational patterns, such as languages that are being passed on, partially maintained, or slowly disappearing. It also highlights languages that children regularly hear but rarely have the opportunity to use or reflect on in learning spaces. This prompt helps to make visible languages resources that are meaningful but often invisible. Languages we want to learn. This prompt can open up a discussion about choices versus obligation in language learning and shift the focus from the past and present to the future. Languages we want to learn often it reflects our aspirations, interests, and sense of identity. Answers may be influenced by peers, popular culture, travel, or imagined futures. They can also reveal the tension between the language learners feel they are expected to learn and the languages they personally want to explore. This prompt helps to connect language learning with motivation and choice, rather than obligation. When we consider all the prompts together, language use appears layered and situational rather than fixed. For example, one language may be used at home, another at school, and another online or with friends. Patterns also reveal language hierarchies, with some languages appear across many categories, while others remain confined or invisible. This comparison prepares group for later work on language visibility and schoolscaping, where similar questions about space and representation are asked. Even from the answers alone, teachers and practitioners can gain valuable insight. They can identify areas where learners may need support or guidance, avoid assuming a lack of competence, and design activities that build on existing language resources. The responses also help to decide whether a group is ready for deeper reflection or whether it is better to remain at the observational level. At the same time, this approach helps to prevent common pitfalls, such as interpreting silence as an absence of language, linking literacy to value, and viewing multilingualism as exceptional rather than a normal part of everyday life. Once the activity has been completed, the key challenge for facilitators is to decide how to guide reflection in a way that suits the group. To support this decision-making process, we recommend using a reflection ladder. This diagram shows how reflection on the language activity can develop step by step. Reflection does not begin with personal stories or in-depth discussion. Instead, it begins with noticing what is visible and gradually moves towards understanding how languages are used, valued, and made visible or invisible. Each level represents a possible depth of reflection. Importantly, every level is complete activity in itself, and the aim is not to reach the top, but to select the most suitable level for the group, the situation, and the learning context. For facilitators, this ladder can be used as a decision-making tool. You should always start with noticing, as this is safe and accessible for everyone. And from there, you can progress to patterns, situations, or meaning, but only if the group feels comfortable and engaged. The ladder also gives you permission to stop. Not every group needs deep reflection, and stopping at an early stage is not a failure. In fact, it often leads to better learning and trust over time. This diagram is an effective tool because it makes reflection visible and manageable. It can help you to avoid overstepping the mark, supports ethical practice, and maintains the focus on learning rather than on a person. The reflection ladder provides an overview of how reflection can evolve. Now let's take a closer look at each step to understand what it offers in practice and how it can be used with different groups. The first step is always the starting point. At this stage, reflection focuses on simple observations. Learners are asked to observe what is visible without explaining, evaluating, or personalizing it. Questions at this level encourage everyone to participate safely. Nobody needs to talk about themselves, their families, or their background. This step is suitable for all age groups and level of experience, and it provides meaningful learning on its own. In the second step, reflection moves from noticing to recognizing patterns. Learners begin to compare what they see, noting which languages appear more often, which are spread across different categories, and which appear only in one place. This step helps learners understand that language use is uneven and partial. It also normalizes differences without requesting personal explanations. For many groups, this level of reflection is sufficient, and it can be a good place to stop. Situations and use. This step introduces the idea that languages are used differently in different situations. the focus of reflection shifts from what languages exist to how and when they are used. At this stage, learners may discuss topics such as home, school, friends, or the media. Participation should remain optional and answers can be kept general. This step works best with groups that already feel comfortable reflecting together. In step 4, reflection connects language use to visibility and value. Learners begin to notice that some languages feel more public and accepted, while others feel more private and invisible. This step prepares the group for activities such as school keeping, in which similar questions are asked about space and representation. This step should only be used when there is trust within the group and sufficient time for careful facilitation. The final step is critical reflection. Here, learners may begin to ask who decides which languages are valued, why some languages feel safer to express than others, and how things could be different. This step is optional and not suitable for every group. It works best with older learners or groups that already have experience with reflective discussion. In some cases, and only if the group is ready, the reflection process can progress to the next stage, which involves exploring meaning. This involves shifting from general discussion to gentle optional questions that use the word you and encourage participants to share their personal views. These questions are not a required part of critical reflection. They provide an additional layer, and facilitators should select no more than one or two. Answers can be brief, general, or hypothetical, and participants should always have an option to opt out. Moving towards meaning works best when learners feel safe, there is enough time, and reflection is framed as exploration rather than sharing personal stories. When used carefully, these questions can help learners to connect their language use with their everyday choices, comfort, and visibility, without turning reflection into disclosure or pressure. To conclude this session, it is helpful to pause and consider what this activity reveals within your own context. First, you could ask yourself, what might this activity reveal about the languages in your group that you hadn't noticed before? As a next step, you could consider how you might fit the activity into what you already do rather than creating it up from scratch. Start by reflecting on how well you know the group's language practices. For example, consider what you know about the languages children use at home, in the schoolyard, or with their families, and what remains unclear or invisible. Next, try to identify moments in your practice where language awareness could be introduced naturally. This could be at the start of the school year, during a project week, before a language-related unit of work, to mark an International Day, or as part of a class meeting or group introduction. Then, choose a realistic first step. This could be as simple as using a prompt from the activity or running a short warm-up exercise that doesn't require reflection. The goal is not to cover everything, but to create an opening. The key takeaway from this presentation should be that language visibility work flourishes when it connects to existing routines, relationships, and occasions, building gradually on what is already in place. Before we close, here is a quick note on references. You'll find a selection of key texts and resources in the video description. If you're interested in exploring this topic in more depth, you will also find a link to the full reference list there. Thank you for watching and for taking the time to engage with this session. Before moving on, please pause and reflect on how these ideas connect to your own context and practice. And if you feel comfortable, please share your reflections and questions in the comments. Your contributions will help us to create a shared learning space here. As the session forms part of a wider course, I encourage you to watch the other videos to gain a deeper understanding of these perspectives. And you can find more information and resources in our website. If you'd like to stay connected, please subscribe and follow our work.